Hi, what's up, seventh graders? How you guys doing? It's Mr. Gold. This is going to be one of the last videos we do. This is for our last test of the year, which is going to be due on Thursday. This is a end of Unit 8 test, probability and sampling. There's going to be 4 parts to the test, and we're going to go over the parts in general. So the first part is just going to be probability questions. So for instance, you might ask, what is probability? By the way, I'm going to be talking this part, so if you want to take some notes and pause the video, I'm going to basically explain all the answers to the questions. So for instance, what is probability? The answer to what is probability is the likelihood of an event happening. That's what the official definition of probability. It is the likelihood of an event happening. Okay, number 2, when it comes to likelihood and not likelihood, most of this is common sense. Like for instance, if I have a bag filled with, say, 10 blue marbles and 5 green and 2 yellow, and I say reach into a bag and pick one, and if I ask you which color marble am I most likely to pull out, the answer would be the blue marble, because there's more blue marbles than anything else. If I have a ping pong ball, let's say I have 5 ping pong balls, and one ping pong ball has a 1, okay, and this has a 3, and this has a 5, and this has a 7, and this has an 8. And I say to you, out of the 5 ping pong balls, if I put them in a bag and pick one out, am I more likely to pick an odd numbered ball or an even numbered ball? All you have to do is count up the number of odd and even, and whichever one has more, that's going to be the answer. So I've got an odd number here, odd number here, odd number here, odd number here, even. So I got 4 odds and 1 even. The answer to this one would be I'd be more likely to pick an odd numbered ball. Okay, same thing with when it comes to percentages. If I took a poll and let's say 30 out of 35 likes football, and let's say 48 out of 49 like basketball, and if I say to you, which is the more popular sport after these polls were done, football or basketball, you could see that 30 out of 35 like football, but 48 out of 49 like basketball. There's only one person who didn't like basketball. So the answer would be basketball. This is better probability, 48 out of 49, than 30 out of 35, where the difference is 5. Okay? Another one would be, which would be the greater probability? Flipping a coin and it being heads, or rolling a dice and rolling a 6. Well, on a dice, you have 6 possible outcomes, right? You have 6 possible outcomes because on a dice, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each side. On a coin, you only have 2 possible outcomes, heads or tails. So the probability of flipping a heads on a coin would be 1 out of 2, and it would be written like a fraction. The possibility of rolling, let's say, the number 4 on a dice would be 1 out of 6. Okay? There's 6 possible outcomes on the dice, 2 on the coin. If I ask what's the probability of heads or tails, the answer would be 1 out of 2. And any number that I picked, 1 through 6, the odds would be 1 out of 6. So that means you have better odds flipping a coin and picking heads or tails than I do rolling a dice and picking a number. Okay? Also, if I said to you, how many possible outcomes are there for a coin? The answer would be 2, right? If I said, what about 2 coins? What are the possible outcomes? with 2 coins, I would take the total possible outcomes of 1 and multiply it by the number that I got over here. So 2 times 2 would be 4. So possible outcomes for 1 coin would be 2. Possible outcomes for 2 coins would be 4. Same thing with the dice. 1 dice would be 6. 2 dice would be 6 times 6, or 36. So you see, we're not, even though 2 plus 2 is 4, it's really 2 times 2. And that means when you get to the dice, it's not 6 plus 6, it's 6 times 6. So 1 dice outcome, 6. 1 coin, 2. 2 coins, 4. 2 times 2. And 2 dice, 36. 6 times 6. Okay? The last one in the question section is about a deck of cards. So we have 52 cards in a standard deck of cards, and each number is represented 4 times. Like for instance, if I picked like a 3, right? In a deck of cards, you have the 3 of hearts, the 3 of diamonds, the 3 of spades, and the 3 of clubs. So I have 4 threes in a standard deck of cards. So if I said, what is the probability that I would pick a 3 out of a standard 52 card deck, right? The answer would be 4 out of 52. All you do is take how many of those numbers would be in each deck and put it over like a fraction of the total possible outcomes. So the answer would be 4 over 52. All right, next we're going to go into our color wheel. That's going to be part 2. And you guys have answered questions on the color wheel before, and most of it is common sense, but we're going to go over the and or difference. So for instance, if I said, what is the probability on our color wheel if I spin it that it's going to land on a 1? Well, how many total possible outcomes are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So to land on a 1, remember we always write the probability as a fraction. So to land on a 1, how many 1s are there? Well, there's 2 of them. So that means my probability is going to be 2 out of 8. What if I say, what's the probability that I land on red? Well, there's 2 reds and there's 8 possible outcomes. Pretty much every answer you're going to give me is going to have 8 in the denominator because there's always 8 possible outcomes on the color wheel. Okay, what if I say, what's the possibility that I land on blue or red? Blue or red? Well, we have to count up the blues and the reds. So there's 2 blues and there's 2 reds. So that means it would be 4 out of 8. Now, here's the big difference. When we say or, that means blue or red. That means it could land on either blue or red, which means we have to count all of them. So we have to count the blues and the reds because we're saying it could land on either of them. If we say, what is if it's a blue and a red, and means that it can happen at the same time. Now, on this color wheel, can it land on blue and red on the same time? No, because there's no 2 colors on any of the spaces. It's either going to land on a blue or a red. It can't land on both at the same time. So if I ask, what is the probability of it landing on blue and red at the same time, the answer is 0 out of 8. It's impossible. Can't do it. Now, what if I combine a number and a color? If I say, what about blue and a 1? So now we have to see how many possibilities of a blue and a 1 at the same time. That's and. Is there any of these? Well, here's a blue and a 4, so that doesn't count. Here's a blue and a 1. So there's only one possibility of it landing on blue and red, a 1 at the same time. So my answer would be 1 out of 8. All right, and one last one. Let's say it's blue and a 1, okay? So if I say blue or a 1. So the big difference being or, okay? Blue and a 1 means it has to happen at the same time, and there's only one space where there's a 1 and a blue at the same time. Blue or a 1 means I can count up all the blues and all the 1s. So how many blues are there? There's 2 blues and there's 2 1s. Now here's the thing. Remember back here we did blue or red, and there was 2 blues and 2 reds, so we did 4 out of 8. This is the exception. If there's a blue and a 1 on the same spot, you can't count it twice, okay? So a blue or a 1 means there's 2 blues and 2 1s, but one of the spaces happens at the same time. So the spaces I can land on is this one, that's 1, this one, 2, and this one, 3. So my answer is going to be 3 out of 8. Okay? All right, that's the color wheel. Now let us move on to the dot plot, which would be part 3. The dot plot over here, part 3, this one's pretty easy. In the beginning, I'm going to ask questions like, which team has the taller or shorter team? So obviously these guys are down here, 1, 2, and 3. These guys are taller. These are the bigger numbers. If I say on team 2, is there anybody who's a 5? Well, there's no dots up there at a 5, so the answer would be 0. If I say on team 1, is there anybody who's an 8? Well, we look on team 1, here's 8, there's 3 dots, so the answer would be there's 3 at number 8. If I say, is there anybody on either team that's a 5? Well, there's nobody here that's a 5, but there's 2 guys here that's a 5. So combined, it's just the 2. All right, now, the range. The range means from the very lowest to the highest on one team. So if I say, what is the range on team 2? Well, the lowest I have is I've got 3 guys on a 1, so it would be 1. And the highest I have is I have 1 on a 3. So my range would be 1 to 3. If I was doing team 2, the lowest I have is I have 2 dots here on a 5, right? And the highest I have is I have 3 dots on the 8. So my range would be 5 to 8. If I asked, so this is team 1, I'm sorry, this is team 2, and this is team 1. So now if I asked you which team has the larger range, well, 5 to 8 is 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a range of 4. This is 1, 2, 3. That is a range of 3. So my answer would be team 1 has the larger range. Team 2 has the smaller range. Okay? The last one is the mean. The mean means the average. And the way you get the average is, so let's do the average, the mean height of team 2. So team 2, what I would do is I have to count up all the dots on the number that they're at. So for instance, I have 3 dots at number 1. So I have to do 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. Then I have 2 dots at 2. So that's 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus a 3 is 7. And I've got 1 dot at 3. So 7 and 3 is 10, right? So I add up the total amount of dots as they correspond to each number. And then I have to divide by the total number of dots. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. So I'm going to take 10 and divide it by 6. And you can do this on your calculator, okay? This is going to end up being 10 over 6 or 1.4. So that is my average height or my mean height of team number 2. And you would do the same thing for team 3. All right, last but not least, reading a bar graph, okay? Reading a bar graph should be pretty straight ahead. It basically, you're answering questions based on what you see. bar graph is meant to be visual. This is going to be part 4. All right, so let's say the question is most A's in the class. Okay, so this is class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, and this is telling me which class has got the most A's. Okay, so if I said to you which class got the most A's, you could see on the bar graph that class 3 is the tallest. If I say who got the least amount of A's, you could see it's 2. If I say which 2 classes got about the same amount of A's, right, then you could see that 1 and 4, well, they got about the same amount of A's. Also, if I said to you who got the second most amount of A's, you could say 1 or 4 and probably be correct. The other thing is, if I ask true or false questions, this graph only shows you which class got the most A's. So if I say true or false, we can see from the graph who got the most F's. The answer would be false because this graph does not show anything about F's. It only shows about A's. Okay? If I said to you, this graph shows that class 3 likes the color orange, that doesn't have anything to do with the graph. This is about A's. It doesn't, the colors doesn't mean anything at all. Okay? If I said this graph shows us that class 1 got more A's than class 2, the answer would be true because that does show us something there on the graph. Okay? And that's basically it, guys. If you need a little extra help with any of this stuff, on Wednesday I'm going to be having a Google Meet in the afternoon. And I will post it to the stream along with the link. All right, so good luck, and I will see you guys soon.